Good morning and welcome to Peace Out. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I lost my ear things and I think the sound's lots better with them, right? Maybe I'll invest in a wireless one or a special one or something at some point. That won't be today. Here we are, where we're all learning together to peace out. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching, right? So I found the most interesting story this morning. Now, I've read this story in Judges several times. Matter of fact, I found two really good stories this morning that I just saw them in a new way. And here's my plug for reading the Bible every day. Because even though you've read it before, and I heard somebody say that once, well, I've already read the Bible through, so I'm done. I read that book and put it back on the shelf. It's alive. And our perspectives change. Our perspectives change, our experiences change. Our relationship with God changes because we grow in grace. That's what Peter said, right? We grow in grace. We grow in our trust of Him. We believe in Him more. We trust Him more each day as we grow, as that relationship deepens with Him, right? And as we learn more about the Word, then our experiences let us get a little more out of this than we got last time we read it. So I read this story in Judges 11. It's about Jephthah. And actually, what was one thing that was really interesting about this story, again, it's Judges 11, and Jephthah, and I don't even know if I'm saying that right, the southern accent with Hebrew names is, just, it's humorous. But anyway, Jephthah was actually born to a prostitute, and when his dad died, so his dad had married a prostitute who had, I think it was she had several sons, it says. So when his dad died, his half brothers kicked him off the land and said, "You were born to a prostitute." Now, how did he have any control over that? Have you ever been judged for something you had no control over? Don't we find ourselves in those circumstances? Sometimes we're being judged over something and we're like, oh, we didn't even have any control over that, or we didn't even have a part in it. Jephthah didn't have a choice, but they kicked him off the land and said, "You can't have our father's land." So he went away, and you know what happened? He was a natural born leader, because it didn't take very long and he had a whole army. It says an army of rebels, but and it wasn't a small army. It says he had a large army following him. Well, time goes on and people come in and attack Gilead, right? They come in and attack his brothers. And now they're like, "Oh, well, you've got an army. Can you come help us?" And he's like, "Why do you want me to help you? You didn't want me." And, that parallels Joseph's story just a little bit, I think, because in Joseph's story, his brothers rejected him. His brothers threw him away. His brothers, more than just kicked him off the land, took everything that should have been his, and Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, right? And yet in the end, they both ended up ruling over and becoming the leaders, the patriarchal leaders of their family. I thought that was an interesting parallel. That was just a side note. No charge. I was free. Anyway, and so they come back to Jephthah and they're going, "Come and lead us into battle. They're attacking us." And he's like, "Okay, so what do I get?" And they said, "If you'll take us into battle and we win, then we'll make you the leader over a whole family and over this whole region." And he's like, "Okay, now let me get this right. When God leads us into battle and when we win, then when God gives us the victory, I get to be the boss." Right? No, he didn't say it that way because that's not king names or nothing. And they were like, yeah. So he writes a letter to this king, because the king says, the king's like, you took our land. You took our land. And so Jephthah writes this kind of lengthy letter to the king going, "No, you made a mistake. We didn't take your land. God gave us the land." And here's what had happened. Way back, remember the story in Exodus and the children of Israel, and when they came to this land, and I'm going to have to remember where it was, the Ammonite king, the Ammonites, when they came to the Ammonites, they said, "Let us just pass through." And the king said, "You're not even passing through our land." And so they had to go around. There were several kings, and they had to go around the long way because the kings in the region wouldn't even let them cross over their land. That's kind of mean, isn't it? I mean, but it was out of fear, to be honest. It was out of fear. And so then Jephthah says, "So I'll tell you what." He says, "We'll fight and you keep what your God gives you. And we'll keep what our God gives us, what the Lord God, the God, gives us." And I loved that challenge, and I thought about it a little bit. And then he goes on and he says, "Do you think you're any better than Balak?" Now, the story of Balak was trying to get Balaam to come and curse God's people because he was afraid of them. And he was trying to find some way so that they wouldn't succeed. So he called for the prophets in the land to come and curse them. And of course, Balaam couldn't do it. That's a whole other story. And I tell you, I want to put that in there because there's something I found I thought was significant. Now, I want to go back. What does this have to do with peace out? Well, he said, you keep what your God gives you, and I'll keep what my God gives me. And I drew that immediately to God gave us peace. God gave us salvation. God gives us grace. God gives us mercy. Because we're not really talking about land in our lives, right? But they were fighting over land. And so then I looked up the name of their god Chemosh or Chemosh. I don't know how to say it because, like I said, again, it's Okie Hebrew, doesn't work real good, right? But it means to subdue. And I was like, oh, and that's what this king was trying to do. He was trying to subdue them and take them. And then I looked up what Balak means. And Balak means to waste. And I was like, wow, isn't that what our enemy wants to do? Because what did God give us? Jesus said in John 14:27, I'm leaving my peace with you. And he said this, it's a peace it's not like the world's peace. It's not temporary. It's not shallow. You can't even compare the two. And so I'm like, I'll keep what God gave me because he gave me peace. I can do that. And I'm not going to let the enemies come at me and try to subdue or put that peace under, or I'm not going to let my enemies try to get me to waste it. Because isn't that a waste? God gave us peace and we don't walk in it. He gives us peace and we don't exercise it. He gives us peace and we don't let it rain. Are we wasting what God gave us? In a sense, I'm not talking about some grave sin or something, but if we don't let it rain, where does it go? We just don't get the benefit, right? If we don't, the peace is there, and it's nothing like the gods of the world can give. It's nothing like these gods of way back in the day that they set up, and the idols and the other religions. It's not even like what other religions can offer us. This peace that we get from just knowing our God, knowing the God, the Creator, our rock, our Savior, etc. Right? And so my goal today is to not let the gods of this world, what would that be? Anything that's not God, really, but it could be fear, it could be doubt, it could be politics, it could be our jobs, it could be worry. I don't know, you fill in the blank, but I'm not going to I don't want what the world gives. I want what Jesus gives. And he said, my peace is not like what the world has to offer. I love that. And so I'm not going to let the world subdue what God has given me. I'm going to walk in that peace. I'm going to embrace that peace. And I'm going to, if I have to do it 1,000,000 times, I'm not going to count, but if I have to do it 1,000,000 times, every time something comes up, fear comes at me, doubt comes at me, stress comes at me, just go back to that peace. Subdue what's coming. We're going to be the ones who subdues, because God has given us this land. I'm pointing to myself for those of you listening. He's given us this land, and he's given his peace in this land. Point to yourself and say, this land has peace because God gave it. And it's better than what the other gods have to offer, the other lands or the other people that are chasing other gods or following after fear and doubt or operating in just, there's a lot of fear in the world today, right? And a lot of chaos. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there. But we don't have to be subdued by it, and we don't have to waste God's peace. All we got to do is just keep going back to it and letting it rain in our heart over and over again. And that's how we win this day. That's how we win, ultimately, the battle. And by the way, Jephthah did go in and wipe the king out, and they did take the land back. And he gave God the glory for that. And that's one thing I noticed about Jephthah, that even though he was rejected by his brothers, and even though he was cast out of the land that was rightfully his, right, he still served God. He said, God gives me the victory. And he still had his heart in God's hands. And I loved that about this story. It's an amazing story. So don't waste the peace God gave you, because it's not like what the other gods give. It's not like what the world has to give. He's given us a peace that is lasting. It doesn't go away, and it works. All we got to do is let it rain. Peace out. Have a great day. Hope I said something that made sense. I'll see you again tomorrow.